People who said their overthinking decreased were 4 times, that is 400% more likely to reach or almost reach their goal. 400%. Not only did they complete more than people who didn't decrease their overthinking, they were much more likely to finish the whole goal.
Welcome to Philosopher Insights, the podcast that delivers wisdom in minutes a day that you can put into practice daily and strive to master over a lifetime.
The podcast committed to sharing ideas that encourage you to bridge the gap between who you are today and the person you aspire to be in the future.
Hi, my name is Herb Lamba, and welcome to my podcast where I will share practical insights from the world's best authors.
Knowledge isn't power. Applied knowledge is. The quest to become the best version of you starts right now.
Hi, and welcome to Philosopher Insights. My name is Herb Lamba. Today we're discussing soundtracks, the surprising solution to overthinking. The author of this book is Jon Acuff, and it's published in 2021. This is the second book from Jon Acuff that I'm featuring in the podcast. I featured Finish, Giving Yourself the Gift of Done, in episode 57. So if you've not listened to that episode, I highly recommend it. I have quickly become a huge fan of Jon Acuff's writing, and I look forward to reading many more of his books. But let's focus on soundtracks. I wanted to share a number of my favorite insights from this book, starting with Soundtracks Shape Life, Broken Soundtracks, Stop Overthinking, Flip the Track, A New Anthem, Pocket Jury, and finishing off with Effort, the Secret Weapon. So let's start with the introduction. Quote, overthinking is when what you think gets in the way of what you want. It's one of the most expensive things in the world because it wastes time, creativity, and productivity. It's an epidemic of inaction, a tsunami of stuckness, and 13 years ago, it was dominating me. Did I want to have 1,345 thoughts about whether there would be adequate parking at the new restaurant we were going to? Did I want to put off asking for a raise for 1 month, overthinking the myriad ways it could go wrong? Of course not, but what could I do? Thoughts are something you have, not something you own. We can't control them, right? Even if we are deliberate in other areas of our lives, we tend to treat our thought life as something we have no control over. If we don't control our thoughts, then I guess our thoughts control us. You can turn overthinking into action. You can use all that reclaimed time, creativity, and productivity to create the life you want. And it starts with recognizing your thoughts for what they really are, a personal soundtrack of your life. End quote. The above passage is an excerpt from the introductory chapter of Soundtracks by Jon Acuff, another outstanding book by this author. I had the pleasure of discussing one of his previous books, Finish, on episode 57 of the podcast, and it was that book that first captured my admiration for Acuff's writing. In this book, New York Times bestselling author Jon Acuff provides strategies for overcoming overthinking by questioning the validity of your thoughts, retiring negative and unkind ideas, adopting positive mantras from others, and using symbols to reinforce helpful thoughts. Insight number 1, soundtracks shape life. Quote, the New York Times did a study to figure out when a song has the greatest shot at getting added to your permanent soundtrack, that list of songs that will always impact you. The title of the article that followed was The Songs That Bind, and it's a fitting description of what a soundtrack does. Using data from Spotify, economist Seth Stephens-Davidowitz found that the most important period for men in forming their adult tastes were the ages 13 to 16. For women, it skews a little earlier, with the ages 11 to 14 being most important. The playlist you unknowingly curate during your life makes for an interesting dinner party conversation. But music is only one small part of a much bigger story. Your thoughts are the internal soundtracks you listen to even more than your favorite song. Over the years, you've built a soundtrack about your career. You have a soundtrack for all your relationships. You have a soundtrack you believe about your hopes, goals, and every other aspect of your life. If you listen to any thought long enough, it becomes part of your personal playlist. End quote. The soundtracks we choose to listen to can greatly influence our thoughts and actions. Positive soundtracks can serve as a helpful and supportive force, fueling creativity and motivation to pursue new opportunities. However, for those who tend to overthink, like many of us, our thoughts can become a hindrance, hindering progress towards our goals and aspirations. It is important to take control of the soundtracks in our lives, as failing to do so can lead to the constant replay of unwanted thoughts and experiences. Insight number 2, broken soundtracks. Quote, have you ever had to work hard to remind yourself of something dumb you said a long time ago? Did you need a to-do list to overthink an embarrassing situation from 8th grade, even though you're now in your 30s? Did you need a note on your calendar to make sure you spend the whole weekend thinking about why your boss called a meeting with you on Monday morning? I've got a wave of dread scheduled for this Saturday at 2 p.m. Is that what you did? Or did those thoughts just show up unexpectedly, not at all connected to anything else you were doing at the time? Those are called broken soundtracks, negative stories you tell yourself about yourself and your world. They play automatically without any invitation or effort from you. Fear does not take work. Doubt does not take work. Insecurity does not take work. End quote. A prevalent problem with overthinking is that our minds tend to default to negative experiences. This can lead to a repetitive rehearsal of negative thoughts, much like how overthinking fixates on these thoughts and plays them on a loop, making it challenging to break free from these negative mental patterns. The cycle of negative thinking, if left unchecked, can have significant impacts on our lives. Quote, broken soundtracks are one of the most persuasive forms of fear because every time you listen to one, it gets easier to believe next time. End quote. It makes you wonder how many opportunities we miss out on when we allow broken soundtracks to be in charge of what we do every day. Insight number 3, how to stop overthinking. Quote, there are 3 actions to change your thoughts from a super problem to a superpower. Number 1, retire your broken soundtracks. Number 2, replace them with new ones. And number 3, repeat them until they're as automatic as the old ones. Retire, replace, repeat. That's it. When you pick the soundtracks you listen to the most, there's no limit to what you can accomplish. So why don't more people work on their overthinking? Because everyone has too many thoughts and doesn't know where to start. End quote. Acuff suggests that we ask our loudest soundtracks 3 questions. First, is it true? Despite the wild things our thoughts have told us over the years, we trust them. When you start to ask a soundtrack a question, I promise you'll be shocked by how many lies you have cluttered up in your head. Second question, is it helpful? Is the soundtrack you're listening to right now, the one that's on repeat, helpful? Does it move you forward or keep you stuck? And the final question is it kind? Is the soundtrack you're listening to kind to yourself? After you listen to it a few times, do you feel better about yourself? A simple strategy to break away from your broken soundtracks is to ask these 3 simple questions to motivate you to start making changes. A broken soundtrack will never turn around and suddenly start telling the truth, or be helpful or kind. They are not designed to do that. Insight number 4, flip the track. Quote, the louder the broken soundtrack is, the more obvious its opposite will be. I told you one of mine was, every time you sit down to write, you should be able to finish the whole book. What's the flip side of finishing a whole book? Writing a few pages, that's the opposite. That's what's on the other side of the coin, which is why I came up with 3 pages is plenty. I didn't sit with the broken soundtrack for hours trying to untangle it. I flipped the coin in my head, and so can you. End quote. As I read this, I couldn't help but chuckle, as I have a similar experience when it comes to writing the script for my podcast. Whenever I sit down to write, I have an overwhelming urge to complete the entire script in one sitting. I'm aware that this is not a practical approach, but for some reason, this mindset persists every time I sit down to write. I love the opportunity to flip this soundtrack, and it starts with awareness of this ridiculous soundtrack I'm playing daily. How about you? Are you able to quickly pick out a broken soundtrack in your life? Nice. Flip it and write down the opposite to create a new soundtrack that'll serve you better. Insight number 5, a new anthem. Quote, I wanted to create a new anthem, something you and I could say in the mirror for 30 days in a row. Something true, helpful, and kind. It would be a collection of positive statements that spoke to both identity and reality. An identity statement is, I've got a gift worth giving. That's about who you are. A reality statement is, momentum is messy. That's about how life works. The statements would be accidental but carefully chosen to address the things people tend to overthink. Momentum is messy addresses perfectionism. I am the CEO of me and I'm the best boss. Focuses on taking radical responsibility for your life while at the same time being kind to yourself. End quote. The concept of reciting positive affirmations to oneself in front of the mirror was originally introduced by Zig Ziglar through his self-talk cards. These cards contained affirmations that were meant to be spoken out loud with the goal of replacing negative thoughts and beliefs with more positive ones. Acuff suggests that we recite a positive affirmation anthem to ourselves every day in front of a mirror. By consistently reinforcing these positive statements about ourselves, we can drown out the negative thoughts and beliefs that have affected us for a long time. Quote, participants who repeated 20 or more soundtracks were 46% more likely to decrease their overthinking than people who repeated 5 or fewer. Imagine if today there was something you could do that took less than 90 seconds and made you 46% more likely to reduce your overthinking. There is. End quote. Acuff's anthem has proven to be highly effective through rigorous testing. Repeat use of the anthem for 30 days resulted in an increase of 9 additional days of goal-oriented work compared to those who did not repeat it. This equates to 108 additional days of goal-oriented work per year. The results are truly remarkable, and further evidence supports the effectiveness of the anthem. Quote, people who said their overthinking decreased were 4 times, that is 400% more likely to reach or almost reach their goal. 400%. Not only did they complete more than people who didn't decrease their overthinking, they were much more likely to finish the whole goal. End quote. Here is the anthem in full. Quote, your name. Choose my thoughts. I know that doing my best starts with thinking my best. Like laying a path for an adventure, these thoughts will set the course for my actions. I'm confident that what I think matters. I'm excited to see what happens next. I'm disciplined and dedicated to stick with it. Here are 10 things I know. Number 1. Today is brand new and tomorrow is too. Number 2. I've got a gift worth giving. Number 3. The only person standing in my way is me, and I quit doing that yesterday. Number 4. I am the CEO of me, and I am the best boss. Number 5. Winning is contagious. When I help others win, I win too. Number 6. Feeling uncomfortable is just a sign that my old comfort zone is having a hard time keeping up with me. Number 7. Momentum is messy. Number 8. Everything is always working out for me. Number 9. I am my biggest fan. And finally, number 10. The best response to obstacles is to do it anyway. End quote. Insight number 6. The pocket jury. Quote, a pocket jury is a collection of broken soundtracks that judge your life whenever you dare to be more than you currently are. It can be built from criticisms by strangers, comments from friends, missteps, and missed opportunities. It often has reams and reams of evidence that you are not the right one to do that thing you're thinking about doing, but yet it's small enough to travel around in your pocket. In addition to getting really loud whenever you try to work on yourself, the pocket jury also specializes in record scratch moments. Those are the intrusive thoughts that appear out of nowhere to remind you of some mistakes you made 4 years ago. That is why new soundtracks often don't last very long. We take this brand new, bright-eyed soundtrack and send it into battle against a jury that's been preparing for the fight for years. Then we hope that the new soundtrack will somehow be louder than all the old ones. End quote. The term pocket jury is a poignant label for the accumulation of negative thoughts and experiences that we carry with us on a daily basis. These thoughts and experiences have accumulated over time, becoming a persistent reminder of past failures and reasons why we should not change our way of thinking. When we attempt to think differently, the pocket jury, or our collection of negative thoughts, quickly surfaces, presenting all the evidence that contradicts our new perspective, and reminding us that it's incongruent with the negative narrative we have constructed for ourselves. It is as though the jury has reached its verdict. You are mistaken or a failure. Remember that. Quote, to beat the pocket jury. Number 1, listen to what it's saying. Number 2, gather evidence about what's really happening. And number 3, tell yourself the truth. End quote. This approach to addressing negative thoughts, such as those in the pocket jury, is similar to the methods suggested by experts for coping with anxiety and depression. One effective strategy is to maintain a journal and document negative thoughts as they arise. It's important not to judge or filter these thoughts, but simply record them. On days when you're feeling more positive, you can revisit your journal and write down the actual reality or truth of the statements you recorded during a negative or anxious episode. This can assist you in challenging and altering negative thought patterns. Quote, it's time to put your pocket jury on notice too. It had a good run. It got to gather negative evidence for years. Cognitive bias has collected examples that reinforce your broken soundtracks without any resistance, but those days are over. They have won for so long, they'll never see the loss coming, especially when you roll in with a secret weapon. Effort. End quote. Insight number 7, effort, the secret weapon. Quote, as we get ready to conclude this book and launch our new adventures, the other broken soundtrack you'll hear is the one that asks, who do you think you are? This is a classic pocket jury statement designed to keep you playing small. Who am I to lead a company? Who am I to write this book? Who am I to manage a sales team? Who am I to raise kids? Who am I to be anything other than what I've already been? End quote. Who do you think you are is probably the most well-known broken record in the world. Anyone that is up for anything in this world has heard that soundtrack, so how do we chip away at it and others like it? Quote, a soundtrack without action is just a fortune cookie. It might be catchy, it might even be clever, but until you put it into action, it doesn't accomplish anything. If you have a new soundtrack you've fallen in love with, fortify it with effort, so that if the pocket jury gets loud someday, you'll have all the evidence you need. End quote. An effective strategy for managing negative thought patterns is to engage in actions that align with the positive beliefs you wish to cultivate. For instance, if you struggle with the belief that you've always been overweight and out of shape, you can begin to exercise and make healthier food choices as a means to challenge that negative thought pattern. It may take some time to shift the belief, but by consistently taking action, you can eventually change your beliefs and your habits. The Optimized Coach program emphasized the crucial step of identifying and reinforcing a desired identity, such as fit father at 50. To achieve this, the program recommended writing down an identity statement daily and engaging in actions that align with that identity, even when you feel completely uninspired. By consistently taking action in line with your desired identity, you can work towards becoming the person you aspire to be. Quote, you're sitting on the most untapped resource in the world. Overthinking steals time, creativity, and productivity by making you listen to broken soundtracks. Do you want to know what happens when you listen to new ones? You give your dreams more time, creativity, and productivity. Not just a little, buckets. What are you going to do with yours? I can't wait to find out. End quote. Those are some of the final words in the book, and Soundtracks by Jon Acuff is an outstanding book that effectively deals with the prevalent problem of overthinking. The author not only offers insightful advice, but also presents it in a highly engaging and entertaining manner. I highly recommend this book to anyone who is looking to make positive changes in their life. You can learn more about Jon Acuff at www.acuff.me, and a reminder to check out episode 57 of the podcast, where I featured another one of Jon's great books, Finish, Giving Yourself the Gift of Done. Have an amazing week. Talk to you soon. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to Philosopher Insights with your host, Herb Lamba. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To go deeper with me, you can register for free at www.philosopherinsights.com for instant access to a growing library of Philosopher Insights, which are 8 to 10 page PDFs plus 20-minute MP3s that break down my favorite insights from the world's best personal development books. To catch all the latest from me, you can follow me on Facebook at Optimal Herb. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.